Hi everyone, so I'm going to be going over class 1 slides for GitHub project management or product management, and it's also for product owners, and it could be for junior developers just to understand the process of how things are going. And it's essentially going to help you understand how tasks are set up, and they're usually called stories, and then they have these BDDs that are set up, so it's clearly outlined what needs to be fixed or what needs to be done. And there's also some ways you can prioritize the tickets and know when the tickets should be due, and it just lets you know who's working on the tickets and how big of a task it will be. And it'll also be a little bit on how developers can set up their branches in order to make sure it relates to that specific ticket that's being created. So overall, let's get into the different types of boards that are available. There is the team planning board, and then there's Kanban, feature release, bug tracker, iterative development, product launch, roadmap, and then team retrospective. So I'm going to be going through each of them individually, one by one, giving you some pros and cons of each, and just a little bit of detail why you'd want to use it, and I'll show you an example on GitHub as well, so then you get to really understand visually what this actually does. So let's go over what team planning board is. It's the broad overarching process of defining the project's goals, scopes, resources, and timeline. It involves just answering the what and why and who before diving into the how. So the purpose is really to align the team on what the project's vision is and set clear objectives and to identify risks and establish a high-level strategy for execution. So let's look into the pros and cons of this. So the pros is that it's providing a direction and clarity for the entire team. It helps secure resources and stakeholders' buy-in, and it identifies major dependencies and potential roadblocks early on. And let's look at the cons. It can be very overly abstract if not tied to actionable tasks, and it's rigid. For long-term plans, often it becomes obsolete as the project evolves. So this is like a waterfall pitfall. So let's look into a team planning dashboard now on GitHub. So I have my account set up right here. And let's take a look at a new project. So I'm going to click on that green button, and then there will be all these different project boards already kind of set up for you. So it says here, team planning, manage your team's work item, plan upcoming cycles, and understand team's capacity. So if I click on that, let's see, I could either select from a repository. I don't really have anything, so I guess I will just create the project. So we can see here it has it's set up in these rows with different columns. We have a title, so we could create a new issue. So let's say we have something for fixing, let's say fixing the header, and here we can set up these BDDs, which I'll talk about later, but let's just pretend there's a story here. Okay, so here I'll talk about stories a little bit later, but if we create this, okay, let me see here, create new issue. Okay, let me refresh here. Okay, there we go. It just didn't fully refresh, but you can see here we got this thing called fix header, and in order to fix this as well, I'm just going to open it up when I click it. there's usually a number associated to it, so I'll just be like T for task 1001, and then that pipe symbol in between. I'll just save it for now. I'll go over the other stuff in more detail in a future video, but let me just exit here. And let's go back to this dashboard. You can see there's the title of whatever this ticket is, whoever it's assigned to, so I can, if you have a team of people, right now it's just myself, so I can assign it to myself, what status there is. This one I'll go into more detail as well. There could be more than these tasks, but here linked to pull requests. So this is when you actually have a ticket that is related to this specific task. So it's a branch that's created on locally, like in Visual Studio. You can create a branch, and then when you push up your changes, it creates it in a branch instead of directly into the main code, and it will be linked right here. So then you can click on that and it will link it to where the code is on the branch. And then sub issue progress. So yeah, any other progress there is on this. And then iteration. So this is like the timeline. So here between December 22nd to January 4th, this is one of the iterations, the first iteration, and then you can see here there's iteration 2, iteration 3, and so on. So usually these iterations last for only 2 weeks. And estimate, so you can put like a number. These are usually like Fibonacci numbers, which I'll go into more detail in another video. So they're usually like 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8, and so on. And then the start date, I don't really usually use the start and target date. I think it's just better to just have the iteration. I mean, unless there's like a hard deadline for a specific task, you can have a target date, but not necessary. And you can see here you can add more and more items, and you could add it from other repositories as well. But this is usually the setup of how these tasks are created, and they are pretty much set up in terms of different types of boards. And you can see here that there is that's the backlog, so we're setting up all of these tasks that potentially have to be fixed, and then a board which contains all the different columns. I'm going to go into more detail actually on the different types of columns that should be done, but you can see here you can get the task and then you can move it across into the different columns, and then when it's done it'll go in the done column and go back here. And then current iteration, what's being done currently. Because there's nothing, this ticket is not set up yet into a current sprint. If I go to the iteration and just click on the current one and then exit there, then when I go back to this current iteration tab, there we go, it will show up that task right there. And then we have the roadmap. So you can see here the roadmap, it kind of shows the timeline. So this is one iteration between the 22nd and the 4th. And it's kind of like a soft deadline as to hopefully this task will be done. But of course, sometimes it cannot be possible and has to roll over onto the next iteration. And then here, these are just my items, which is linked to, because you signed the ticket to yourself. Like this ticket, I have assignees and I signed it to myself, and that's why I can see the tickets that I'm working on here in the column or the tab called My Items. That is the general idea of the team planning dashboard. If you have any questions, make sure you leave your comments down in the description below. And yeah, just let me know what questions you have. I'll answer them as fast as possible. And if there needs to be additional videos to explain things further, just let me know. Next, let's talk about Kanban. So it's a visual workflow management method, and work items are represented as cards on a board with columns. It's like to do, in progress, done. But there's actually more to it, which I'll get into more detail in another video or a little bit later. And it limits the work in progress to improve the flow. So you'll see that these are little cards that you can move across the board, and depending what state it's at, it eventually reaches the done state once it's gone through a process. And the purpose is really to visualize the work and identify bottlenecks and optimize the efficiency of the delivery process. It's often used to manage ongoing maintenance or operational work. So let's take a look at the pros and cons of using a Kanban. The pro is there's extreme flexibility, priorities can be adjusted at any time, and there's a clear visualization of bottlenecks and workflows. And the focus is on finishing current work before starting new work, such as WIP limits. And then the cons are there's a lack of time boxed iteration that can sometimes reduce a sense of urgency. So this is where I talk about iterations. They have a 2-week span, and it can be really loose, so it's not like saying, okay, it's due within the next 2 weeks. It can move over to the next iteration, which can cause an issue if it really needs to be done at a urgent time. And it requires discipline to enforce WIP limits and keep the board updated. And it can be harder to predict long-term delivery dates. So this is where you could add that extra column in the dashboard to know exactly when you want it to be done, but still it is really limited using a Kanban. So I'm here at my GitHub account, and I'm going to be creating a new dashboard here for Kanban. So I'll go into new projects, and we'll see some templates that pop up. And you can see here, Kanban, visualize the status of your project and limit work in progress. So if I click on Kanban, there's no selected repository right now. I'm going to start from scratch. And here as well, you can change the title. So Kanban board, and then I'll create the project. And you can see here, there's a few columns here. But there are going to be actually more columns in a future video. But for right now, let's take a look at this. Backlog, just any tasks that will eventually come into the sprint. Ready, so people can pick it up. And then in progress, what people are working on now. And then review process, so people can look at before it actually gets merged into the code and it can be approved. And then there is done column, so the ticket is ready to go. And you can see here, same thing, priority board, the different columns, and then the team items. So whatever items are the tasks that are set up, you can see same type of columns are set up with the title, status. So let me actually create a new issue here, and I'll just say T1001 fix, or just say create header for the website, and then we'll click create, and I'm gonna refresh. Okay, it's there. So T is just like task. You can really label it whatever you want, but I'm just saying here it starts at 1001. We're creating the header, and then here we can set up other criteria for the ticket. So when I open it up, I have this projects area, which I'll get into more detail. But here you can see targeted date that I've mentioned, where if it really has a due date, we could set up a date specifically here to make sure that this task gets done. But same thing, we got a status, where is it on the board, and then link to pull request. So is there any ticket that's already set up, ready to go for this? Sub issue progress, so is this like what type of task it is, and then size, sizing, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail, but here it shows you the t-shirt sizing. You can watch the video on t-shirt sizing to understand it. Estimate, there's another video on estimates and Fibonacci sequences. It goes in order of 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8, and so on. And then priority, if it's a really high priority or not so high. And then the dates, of course, if we really want it. And a roadmap, timeline for a ticket if we want to set that up. The reason why it's not showing right now is because we have not set up a see estimate size relationship. Okay, so this one doesn't seem to have the iteration, which is why it's not showing up. I'm going to get into more detail of all the other features a little bit later. And then, of course, this is my items. So if you pick up a task, it will show up in your board right here. And we got a feature release as well. So what is a feature release? It's the process of delivering a new piece of functionality or set of functionalities to users. And this is the accumulation of development work. And the purpose is really to provide incremental value to the users, test hypothesis, and gather feedback in a controlled manner. And let's look at the pros and cons of a feature release. So it delivers value early and often. So it's like versus one giant big bang launch. What the fuck is that? So it delivers value early and often, and then it reduces risk by allowing for rollbacks or gradual rollouts. So rollbacks are really, what needs to be done again or come back to a specific area. And then gradual rollouts is what's going to be eventually released, what's going to come out for users to see within the new application. And then there's it enables data-driven decisions based on real user feedback. And then the cons are it requires a robust release engineering CI/CD pipeline. So feature release, yes, it does go through a vigorous process of intense testing with QAs and also a process of how releases are done. So it's tracked at every stage of the process, whether it goes to, the Apple Store or the Play Store. There is a specific way that how you should be setting up these releases, because yes, you're merging the code into the main code, but you're also in that main code you'd eventually create maybe a copy of that project and a new folder called releases, and then you'd have a backup copy of each of the versions that you have released within the store. And this requires a vigorous process within the CI/CD pipeline as well. And it can be chaotic if not well organized with the marketing support. So there is a lot of processes, as I mentioned. It has to go through many steps, and the really important part is having good documentation and supportive team members that'll help you when you're initially starting out. And there's too many small releases. Sometimes it can fatigue users. So the problem with feature releases is sometimes there's a lot of small little features that companies want to release. Maybe it's like one week they want like some sort of pop-up, another week they want a new message banner showing. So if you continuously have these releases over and over again every week or every few weeks, it can burn out the developers, because as I mentioned, releases take actually quite a bit of time, and you have to be very careful because whatever you're pushing out to the users, you have to make sure it's very well tested and it fully works before releasing it to the stores. So let's take a look at what a feature release is. So here's my GitHub, and I'm going to create a new project, and I will set up a release dashboard. So down here, feature release, manage your teams, prioritize work items when planning for feature releases. So I will click on this dashboard and let's see what it comes up with. And I'll put feature release as the title, create project. And you can see here again, same thing, you can have these tasks that you create. Let's just say T1001. Let's say release of new header. Actually, this entire thing is a release, so it'll be like adding a new header, and then you'd add a description, which I'll go into more details later on, and I would create this, and I'll refresh the page. Usually it's supposed to show up automatically, but I think there's some sort of issue here on GitHub. It takes some time. There we go. So now we have our task here. We can assign it, whoever is working on this. And actually, if this is a release, I mean, we could also say, okay, this is, well, technically it's okay, because if this entire dashboard is called release feature releases, what it'll essentially do is it'll take all the tasks that are part of this release. So here I can also say T1002, create a draft. I'm going to actually fix this. T02, fixing footer now, let's say. And I will save that. And convert to issue. There we go. So we have this task as well. So you can see here, as certain tasks are created within the iterations, we have certain features that we want released within, let's say, by the end of this year in, let's say January 2026, end of January 2026, we want to release all of these tickets. So you can see here, it's going to be all under this board here, which is called feature release. And you might have multiple feature release boards because one will be in January, another one will be in February. And right here, this is, let's say, January, and then we have all these tickets that are lined up here. You can see what tasks have been worked on, who's it's been assigned to, where the PR is, if that's been done already, and then the size of the tasks, estimation, and iteration, what iteration it was part of like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, or maybe it's not even been started yet. So that's even a bigger issue, because if a ticket has not been started and it's part of a release very soon, then that is a urgent ticket which needs to be done right away. And then of course the start date and target date as needed. So these are some pretty good layouts of tickets. And then of course you can see on the dashboard, then you can organize and see, okay, are some of them done here? Maybe some of them are still in progress. So usually in releases on the dashboard, you'll see they're mostly on the right side, but of course occasionally, sometimes there's a very big issue and it's not even close to being done. And then we got roadmaps again, just seeing, okay, when are these tasks done? Are they part of a specific iteration that they've been completed at? We could also list the types of bugs that are going on, if any, and then if any of them are in review right now. and any tickets that you have been assigned to or certain developers have been assigned to, you'll see a list of them here. So let's see what a bug tracker is. It's a system. It's often part of a larger issue tracking tool like GitHub Issues, Jira, etc. And it's for logging, prioritizing, assigning, and monitoring the resolution of software defects. And its purpose is really to ensure that bugs are systemically identified and managed and fixed, preventing them from being lost or ignored. And let's see the pros and cons of a bug tracker. So the pro is that it creates a single source of truth for all known issues. It provides historical data on product quality and team responsiveness, and it's essential for triggering and prioritizing issues against new feature work. And the cons are it can become a black hole if not regularly triaged and cleaned up. So bug trackers, you really need to make sure you're on top of it and not just leaving it just in the back somewhere. You really need to make sure it doesn't accumulate and you're working on it as soon as possible. And poorly written bug reports are useless. It requires good process discipline. So just remember that you can't really use vague language. The best thing I found was taking screenshots or video recordings of the bug and then creating that ticket and then kind of listing out exactly how you found the bug, the exact steps you took, so then someone else who picks up the ticket or looks at it can reproduce that error and they know where it is exactly. And it can create a us versus them dynamic between testers, QA, and developers if not used collaboratively. So just making sure you're really documenting exactly how the bug was created and then making sure it's tested accordingly. So let's take a look at GitHub, and we'll go to projects again, and then let's create a new project. And this one is called Bug Tracker. So right over here, Bug Tracker tracks and triage your bugs. So I'll click on this, and I'll call it Bug Tracker. Create project. Okay, so here to triage, this needs to be triaged. Okay, and then backlog, ready, in progress, in review, and done. Okay, so triage is just, let's look up the definition. So definition of triage is the preliminary assessment of conducts a preliminary assessment in order to determine the urgency of their need of treatment and nature of treatment required. Triage for coding. It means to assess the issue, give better description and clearer example to pave the way to better fix it. Okay, so it's just another way of setting up a column that shows what bugs are showing right now on the app and just creating tickets for this. So down here you can add an item and again just do the ticket number and then fix header bug, let's say fixing, or just say fixing header is fine, and then I'll just create that issue. And here you write the story, which I'll talk more about later. I'll just first create it right now. And then here we could see this thing called fix header. And so this is to triage, so it means to just look into and see how you can reproduce it. And it'll be nicer if there's like a little item here that can actually track that it's a bug, but it doesn't show it. I'll show you later in the video. I think it's a better way than adding a triage column, but still same process. You got the backlog, what tickets will need to be done, ready, what's ready for developers to pick up, in progress, what developers are working on, and then in review if the PR is done and it's ready to be reviewed by the QA or product owners, product managers, and then when it's done. And then here you can filter through all of the items that are being triaged, looked into. And then in review, what's in review right now, and what items are assigned to yourself. Let's take a look at iterative development. So it's a core philosophy where software is built in small, repeating cycles. Iterations are sprints. Each cycle involves planning, designing, coding, testing, and reviewing small chunks of work. So again, it's just like those little, like every little, it's like when you break up the timeline every 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, that's one iteration, and then the next 2 weeks is the second iteration. It's just a way of kind of tracking how many tickets you work on each of those 2 weeks. And the purpose is to really embrace change, incorporate feedback continuously, and improve both the product and process with each cycle. So as you go along with each iteration, you'll see you usually go through this with the team and describe, what went well during this phase, what could be improved, and once you discuss it, hopefully the next iteration will go a lot more smoothly. And if we look at the pros and cons of iteration development, the pro is highly adaptable to change and requirements, and continuous feedback reduces the chance of building the wrong thing, and regular delivery keeps momentum and morale high. But the con is that it feels unstructured to stakeholders used to fix plans. Maybe it's just unstructured because it's like loosely held sort of requirements. So then every 2 weeks, even if you don't finish, it could be moved and rolled over onto the next iteration. So maybe some stakeholders may not like that. And it requires a strong discipline and communication within the team. So you just need to make sure that the team members know which tickets are in what iteration, making sure they prioritize which tasks should be done first. And then also the big picture can sometimes be obscure by focus on the current iteration. So because there's so many little tasks within the iteration, sometimes you're not really sure like what is the overall goal because each task is split up into smaller chunks. But usually that's discussed within the sprint planning, or there's usually releases, or even there's usually meetings every day with the team. So usually discuss what big tasks are coming out for a release, and that usually gives you an indication on what the big picture is. But if you're looking at just the individual ticket itself, it may be hard to understand what the big picture is when you're just working on maybe a specific section on the header area, for example. All right, so let's get started on creating a iterative development board here. So I'll go to projects, new projects, and here we'll scroll down. Iterative development, it says plan your current and upcoming iterations as you work through your prioritized backlog of items. So if I click on this and just type iterative development for the title of this, create the project, you can see here it creates that same sort of dashboard here, and you got your tab for current iteration. We got a tab for the next iteration. So iteration, again, it just means depending how you specify it, but it's usually every 2 weeks. So one iteration is 2 weeks, and then it changes to the next iteration. So the first one might be iteration 1, the next one is iteration 2, and then so on. And prioritize backlog, so anything that will eventually be worked on if there is more time for it. And then the roadmap here, again, we got a timeline for tickets to know. Here you can see the numbers, which is the days in the month, and you can plan for when those tickets will be worked on. And then in review, if there's anything right now in PR review, so someone else is reviewing the tickets, it'll be listed here. My items. So anything that you are currently assigned to a specific ticket, it will show up in this column. I would say that the in review and my items are not 100% needed. Prioritize backlog might not be bad, but I think backlogs usually don't have these columns. It's usually just one column and then you list out all of the things that are part of the backlog. And then I do like that they have this at next, so whatever is coming up later, you can kind of see then what's coming up in the future. And for product launch, what is it? It's a coordinated effort to introduce a new product or a major version. It's a significant collection of feature releases to the market, and it involves marketing, sales, support, and development. So this is when you really have something big, like maybe a new home page or maybe a new points system that's coming up. So this feature is just coming up to be launched out for users to actually start using, and its purpose is to maximize awareness, adoption, and successful use of the product in its target market. So if we go to the pros and cons here, we can see that it creates a focused moment for market and PR to generate buzz. So it's just like something big that you're trying to work towards and releasing to the general public. And maybe you gave like a little advertisement or promo to people in the public as well that something's going to be coming out. And it can align with company ecosystem around major milestone. So it formalizes the handoff from the development to go to market teams. And the con is that there's a high pressure big bang event that can conflict with the philosophy of continuous quiet delivery. So sometimes these launches can be really high stressful events because there's a lot of testing that needs to be involved and it needs to meet the deadline as well. And sometimes it needs to be pushed over to a later date because there's still more bugs and fixes that need to be done. And then often requires extensive preparation and coordination beyond the dev team. So there is a lot of coordination with the business team and also product managers, product owners, and the QA team, because they need to make sure that the launch is smooth and there's no problems and bugs and it meets all of the business requirements. Hi everyone, so we're going to be looking at the product launch dashboard now. So if I go to projects on my GitHub, new project, and then down here we should have product launch. It says manage work items across teams and functions when planning for a product launch. So product launch is really just when you're submitting like a new feature to the store, so then users can use that new feature. And I'll just put here as a title, product launch. Create this board here. And you can see here there's a prioritized backlog. We can always add a ticket, create a new issue, right? So T1001. So new header. And I'll just create it for now, just to see it. And I'll just refresh the page. It should show up. And there we go. We could see that we have our ticket here. Let's go to status board. Okay, we got something to do here. Current iteration. So we haven't added it to the current iteration. Of course, when we click on the ticket, we'd have to go into the projects here, and then here in iteration, we can click the current one. And then once that is set, then when we go to current iteration, I'll close that. We should see that ticket now. There we go. So we got it. And then we got a roadmap. Again, the timeline here, you could see this ticket is part of this specific week or this 2-week iteration. And then the bugs, if there's any bugs going on. I don't think I really like the way that it's set up as bugs like that, because sometimes there's different things like tasks, bugs, documentations, and so on, and I didn't even specify which type it is. So this technically might not be a bug. So I'm gonna look into showing you another way to set up the dashboard later in this video, but there's my items, so whatever's assigned to you, and of course you can create more tabs, and that's the overall view of this dashboard. So now we got the roadmap, and what it is, it's a visual high-level timeline that communicates the strategic decision and major themes of a product over time. So it could be the next 6 to 18 months, and it's a key output of the team planning. So really it's just a timeline of all the different things that are going on that are going to be part of the release or different releases throughout the few months. And then the purpose is really to align the stakeholders and internal teams, executives, and customers on the vision and the planned evolution of the product without committing to specific release dates for every feature. So really it's just kind of a loose type of timeline as to, these are the potential timelines that we have, and hopefully we're going to be able to meet those, but it may shift over time. And let's look at the pros and cons for this. So the pro is it's excellent communication and alignment tool. It helps prioritize major initiatives and manage expectations, and it's flexible. Themes can shift as needed. So yeah, the great thing about these timelines or having these small tasks is that these tasks can really be changed between different iterations, because there could be something that's blocking it, and sometimes there's different types of iterations. Like I know, for example, usually I say that iterations are 2 weeks, but sometimes there's specific holidays like Christmas holidays, and usually if the 2 weeks lands within that Christmas week, they change that to a 3-week to incorporate that 3 weeks into one iteration. And the con is it can be misinterpreted as a fixed promise of feature and deadlines, and requires regular updates to maintain relevant. So this roadmap, it does show like the timeline of things, but these deadlines or this timeline of, this second week iteration, it might not actually be applicable to having the task actually done by that time. So it really needs to have some flexibility to it, and it needs to be communicated to all the stakeholders as well. So let's take a look now at how we can set up the dashboard here. So I'll go to Projects, New Project, and then we should get a pop-up here. And if I scroll to the bottom, there's this thing called Roadmap. It manages your team's long-term plans as you plan out your roadmap. So let's click on this. And I'll go up to top, just name it Roadmap. There we go. So looks like we got this monthly roadmap timeline, so we can add an item. Let's click here and just say T1001, new header, and then we can create it. And I'll just refresh, and let me click on the ticket. And then we should be able to set a timeline here. Okay, so start date 24, end date 21. Let's try that. Okay, so as you can see here, so we could have the start and end date, and then we can customize like when this specific ticket gets released. But then I guess it's just a little bit harder when you make iterations, because that makes it into every 2-week chunks. So it just depends how you want to set it up. And there's quarterly roadmap, so every 4 months or so, 3 months. And then backlog here, we got the whatever tickets we need to start working on. I would still personally not do start and target dates, just because it's usually companies just deal with just those whatever 2-week iterations are, because those 2-week iterations you just know exactly when sort of it's done, and then you can accumulate all those tickets. But then if every one of the tickets, for example, have a start and end date that are different, then that's going to be a problem, because now you don't even know when to cut the branch, when it's important, when it's not important for the release. So I would not do a start and target date. Just iteration is enough usually, but here's another way of doing this. And this is the team retrospective. So what is it? It's a regular structured meeting, and it typically is at the end of the iteration or sprint, and it's where the team reflects on the recent work process and what went well and what didn't went well and how they can improve. And the purpose is really to foster continuous improvement in the team's workflow, tools, and communication as core agile practices. So essentially it means at the end of the 2-week iteration, there's a meeting and we talk about, this is what we've done well, and did we meet all of the tickets that we want to complete in this iteration? If not, how can we improve this? Do we need to add more tickets or less tickets to the iteration in order to make it realistic? So really it's just a little bit more of a planning phase. And to go over the pros and cons of team retrospective, the pro is that empowers teams to own and improve their processes, and surface interpersonal and procedural issues early. So it surfaces interpersonal and procedural issues early, and it builds trust and psychological safety within the team. So it's just really to check in, make sure we know what went well, what didn't go well, and how we can improve. And then the cons is really can become a complaint session without actionable outcomes. It requires a facilitator to ensure make sure it's productive and safe, and the teams may resist if they need no follow-through on the agreed improvement. So, sometimes, there can be some negative things that come out of it, where you did not meet certain deadlines, and people have their own ways of working, and what may work well for some people may not work well for others. But really, it's just a time we can discuss and see overall collectively how we can improve. So let's go back here to GitHub, and we're going to go to projects, and then we'll do the last dashboard here that's on GitHub. So new projects, we'll see when we get this pop-up, and then we scroll down here, team retrospective. It's reflect as a team what went well and what can be improved next time, and action items. So I'll click on this, team retrospective. Okay. And here we go. So this is actually not that bad. This is actually really good. So there could be some sort of agenda for the column, and then here what went well. So usually what happens is the team members all kind of just write their own tickets here, or little responses, and they say, okay, we communicated well, or we did this well as a team for this week. or these 2 weeks, and then what can be improved. So then, if there's any issues that anyone has faced while they were working on the tickets, they can post it right here, and it'll just let everyone on the team know, because maybe not everyone communicates with one another, and just having this open discussion just kind of allows others to see what other issues other people are facing and if it's similar issues. And then action items it's actually really important. So action items are for whatever can be improved. You move these tickets. So let's say, for example, I need to have faster communication with product owners, let's say. Okay, so we'll just create that as draft for now. It's fine. And, usually there's going to be a bunch of tickets right here. And what happens is everyone votes for what is the most important one. And maybe the top 2 important ones are then moved over here into action items. And action items just means, okay, we're going to look at these 2 items for this upcoming sprint. How can we improve it? And making sure that it is actually improved and it's not just talked about. So this is how you can just focus on the most important things for the team. And then here there's categorize feedback. Okay, we can organize whatever feedback shows up here. Action items. Okay, if there's whatever action items. So here we need to have faster communication with PO. So we'll show all this action items. What are we working on this week? And maybe we'll also assign it to someone. So maybe for this one, we can have one of the POs lead, how they can improve their discussion with the rest of the team. And then usually it's not linked to any type of ticket really. There could be some sort of category. Project planning, team retrospective, team dynamic. Yeah, so depending on, I guess, what grouping or category this type of task is, we could categorize it, or we can also add whatever other notes that we want on the side. So this is actually not a bad little dashboard. So let's talk about a roadmap. So what is the roadmap? Just in a little bit more detail. A roadmap is, in GitHub projects, it's a visual layout that displays work items as horizontal bars on a timeline, as we've seen in those examples, and it provides a high-level chronological view of the project's schedule, so you know when something starts and ends. And the purpose is really to visualize the planned start and end dates for the initiative, track long-term progress, and communicate project timelines to stakeholders to help with capacity planning, identifying overlap, and aligning the team's work with strategic goals. And to get into a little more detail about that tab called My Item on GitHub, what it is, it's a personalized project view that filters and shows only the work items, issues, or pull requests assigned to you. And the purpose is really to let you quickly focus on your own tasks and responsibilities without seeing the entire team's backlog. And now I think this is the most important thing. I'm going to go into how the individual tickets are set up, and I'm going to be setting up a proper dashboard that I think is going to be very helpful for any project that you work on. And the individual tickets have these things called assignees who will review the code, labels to describe if a ticket is a bug, documentation, POC, which is something you investigate, or a story. And then projects, it contains a foundation, information of the ticket, and the milestone is a tool to group related issues and pull requests around specific project goals and to target timeframes. And it acts as a container that tracks progress towards completing a set of work. And there's relationships as well on these tickets. And if a ticket is related to maybe a parent ticket, or it's blocked by another ticket, or maybe it's itself blocking a ticket. It'll be tracked there in relationships. And then development, it's really a link to a branch that has been created for this ticket. So let me show an example, and I'll go through everything in more detail as we go through these next few slides. So for example, we have these projects, and the project is, you can see here, it contains some information on the right side, and projects contain basics of a ticket. It contains status, priority, estimated, size, and iteration, as you can see here, and I'll go into more detail what each of those mean. We're going to go over all the slides first before I get into the actual dashboard. It'll just make it easier when I explain things. So here for projects, you'll see the basics of a ticket on the right side on GitHub Dashboard. It'll have status, priority, estimated, size, and iteration. And I'll go through detail as to what each of them mean. And you'll see here project status. So there's usually different columns on a dashboard. What we've seen before in previous little clips is there's like a done column, in development column, or backlog column, and so on. But you can actually break it down into many more columns because you may have more team members and just a more complex system that you're trying to work with. So backlog is really just for a bunch of tickets that you're eventually going to work on. Maybe the managers, they're product owners or product managers, they are still writing the tickets and still thinking about how to set it up. And then there is ready for dev. So that means when developers can actually start coding out that project, that at least that little section of the project in development, when the coder is working on the project. And blocked is just, if something is holding the person up, maybe they need to communicate with another department, they need help from someone else, they can't continue, so they put a ticket in blocked. And then there's failed test. So failed test is usually after, so before I get to failed test, I'll go to PR review. So after a coder has done something in development column, it will move the ticket in PR review column. So that means that someone else is going to be looking at their work and just making sure that it's all set up properly, the code is nice and organized. Maybe they'll add some comments, and then the developer who was working on the ticket before just needs to fix some things. And if it's all good, they will approve that PR, which is a pull request. And a pull request is really just a branch in GitHub, and I'll show you how that is done as well later. But after the PR is done being reviewed, it gets into the column for ready for test. That just means that the QA members can pick up any of the tickets in ready for testing, and once a QA member has picked up a ticket, they will move the ticket to in test. So that means the QA member, and maybe even like the PO, they're going to be testing something on their end, they would assign that ticket to themselves. The ticket is now in test column, and they'll be just testing, make sure it all works. And this is where if anything has failed, it did not go through the testing just didn't go well at all, they'll move that ticket in test into the failed test. So anything here in test, it can move back into the failed test, and that just means that any developer who worked on this ticket before will have to relook at the ticket and just fix any of the issues. And again, like once the developer takes that ticket from the failed test, it'll go back to in development here, and they'll do all the fixes. And once they pushed up their code into a new PR, they'll put it in a PR review column again, and then it'll go through again, just approval from another developer, and then it will move from PR review to ready for test again, and then either the same tester can pick it up or a different QA tester can pick it up, and then they'll move it for in test once the QA person has picked up the ticket. And then once everything has passed and everything is okay, then they can move that ticket to the done column. And there's something called project priority. So project priority just means we can specify how important a ticket is. So it can go all the way from P0 to like P5, P6. It doesn't matter. It depends how the company wants to set it up. But let's say you have P0. That's the most important ticket. That means that you want to really prioritize this and you want to get this done within the current iteration or as soon as possible for a release. And then there's P1, which means, okay, it's not too important. There's other tickets that might be more important than this one. And then there's P2, that would be like the least important. So it could be like, okay, maybe it's just updating a little spacing somewhere on the application. But then there's other bigger issues where a really big major bug is happening in the login page. So that bug in the login page would be like a P0. And the spacing, it could be done much later. It doesn't really matter. So that could be like a P2. So it's the least important. And it's just helpful for project managers, product managers, any managers to really understand what tickets we should be really focusing on. And then there is the project estimated. So project estimated, it uses this Fibonacci type mechanism. And then we got project estimated. So it's pretty much story points that are assigned to a task using the Fibonacci sequence, which represents a relative effort or complexity of the work. And it reflects the reality of that larger tasks are harder to predict. So Fibonacci numbers, they are just the sum of the two that precede it. So let's say we have one, so we always start at 1. We don't start at the number 0 just because it just means that there's no effort, there's nothing. So we'll say if something is a 1, like changing a text or something, it's really quick and simple. And the next number, because I mentioned it's something preceding it, usually the Fibonacci will be like 0, 1, 1, and then so what you do is take the preceding 1 plus 1, and that would be 2. So then that's why we have the number 2 afterwards. And then we take again the preceding, so 1 plus 2, that would give us 3 for the next Fibonacci number. And then the next one would be 2 plus 3, that will give us 5. And then we want the next number, so we'll take 3 plus 5, and that will give us 8. And so on and so forth. You can keep going on and on with the numbers, but I would not go higher than a 5 or 8, just because then the bigger the number it is, then that means that the story is going to be very large and it should be broken down into even smaller chunks. So if something is too large, it just means that it could take like many weeks, maybe even months. So if we could break it down into smaller chunks, so then it fits within an iteration, that 2-week period, if possible, that is the best. Usually tickets are around the numbers 2 and 3, so they can be completed usually within a few days. So usually a 1, it's like, okay, I can complete something within maybe an hour or 2. It's very simple. And then there's a number 2, so maybe that will take a few more hours just to really figure out, maybe 3-4 hours or something. And then there is a 3, so that's something maybe requires a little bit more effort. There's some sort of logic, and it could take maybe a day, maybe a little bit more than a day. And then there's number 5, so this could take a few days, so maybe something like a blog. Actually, that could be very big as well. So let's say you want to set up a template, standard template for a blog. Maybe that could be a 5, if depending on the complexity of, maybe you have certain sections that have certain features. So that could be a 5. And then number 8, this could be something that is very big, like maybe re-adding all of the blogs from an old blogging site, but you have like hundreds of different old blogs, and this could take many days or weeks even. And probably sometimes an 8 can be broken down into smaller tickets, but it's really up to the team members how they would like to go about it. This is usually how the Fibonacci came to life. There was this phenomenon here or study here, like the sunflower, pine cone, this broccoli, seashell, pyramid, galaxy. They have this type of structure to it, and as you can tell, it's a little bit hard to see, but here in the center, you'll see it starts off with 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and this is the exact same number and pattern sequence that is happening in actually many of natural resources going on in the world, and that's kind of where we got the Fibonacci sequence from. And then we got t-shirt sizing. So t-shirt sizing is also known as just size. It's a high-level project estimation method that uses clothing sizes like extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large, and so on. And instead of precise numbers to represent the relative effort, complexity, and scope of the task or projects. So it's really the same as Fibonacci, but instead we're just using this convention instead. So again, extra small is just a very quick and small task. And then as we keep going, you can see extra large is a very big task, and it requires maybe more than 2 weeks, which could be broken down into a smaller ticket as well. And you'll see here, this is what it'll look like within GitHub drop-down menu, which you can select whatever size you think it is. And then we got this thing called project iteration. So it's pretty much a date range of what group of tickets we would like to complete. And it's usually the iteration changes every 2 weeks. So sometimes it can be 3 weeks depending on how, like if there's celebrations going on, we just want to extend it. But it's usually an agreed upon method that is done within a team, so it could fluctuate, and you determine when that 2-week iteration, let's say, starts and ends. So then once it ends, there's usually a meeting at the end of each of the iteration to really see how you did as a team at the end of that iteration, and see what could be improved, what's going well, and so on. And then we got something called a story. So a story is really a narrative that describes what the ticket is about. There is this thing called BDD. It's behavior-driven development. It's in a format of given, when, and then. It's really a formal process of how tickets are written, and there could be many BDDs in a story. So there could be like 5, 6, maybe 10 BDDs in one story, because there's small little details, maybe like, for example, setting up a blog template. There could be one section for a header, one section for images, one section for just a summary of things. So each of those different sections can be written as BDDs within one of the ticket stories, which I will go over in an example very soon. And then a scenario is a specific way a user interacts with the system to achieve a particular goal. Again, it's just achieving that one specific task in order to get it done, and there could be many parts to complete that one specific task. And here again, this is just a visual representation of a story. You can see here's like a ticket number at the top. With the ticket number, you can really label it as however you want. I put T for ticket, and then 1026. It's just a numbering mechanism, so then you can kind of keep track on what number of tickets you're creating, but also it's another way of distinguishing between the different types of branches that you'll create, because the branches that you create depend on that ticket number and then also the title. And then here we can see who created this ticket. The narrative is really just a overall description as to what the story is about. And then the BDD just says given, when, then, and then scenarios, again, just a quick little 1-2 sentences as to what this is about. And then underneath you'll see this thing BDD number 1. You can put a title for it. And then here it says you're just going to be making like different levels of whatever for this profile page. So it's just another way of organizing how you want to write tasks to be done. And then on the right side of the story, you'll see the same thing I've talked about just now, which is, okay, first you can assign someone to it. So if I'm working on this ticket, I put my name there, status, what area in the column of the board is it going to be on, priority, is it really important, estimated, what is the Fibonacci number that we'll use, and size, same thing, it's the how complex this story is and how much effort it will take. And then iteration, are we currently working on this or will we work on this later? And then issue, is this a story, is this documentation, is this a bug? You just have to label it here, or it could be a POC, which is just an investigation. And then yeah, other settings that you want to configure for your story, and I will get into this as well in a video very shortly. So that's kind of an overall summary as to just information about what a ticket is, how to set up a ticket. So let's get into how we can actually use this in a dashboard on GitHub now. So let's look at this example right here and let's see how we can set up a dashboard, and I'll explain things along the way. So right over here, let's say we want to add a ticket here. You can see that this is the backlog. It just means that these are tickets that we want to set up, we're still working on, but also it'll show some here ready for dev, any other statuses available. We could filter them out at the top as well, so could say only items with no status. But here, let's say we have all these tickets we're still working on. They want to edit a few things. If you click into it, you'll see there's a title, a number associated, which is incrementing by 1 for each of the new tickets that are being added. And you can see we got the narrative, overall description, and then we can describe each of the different tasks that will be going on within this ticket. On the right side, you can see we can assign it to ourselves. If we click down here, we can click to assign it to ourselves. And we could also label it, whatever label, story, bug, documentation, POC. And then here in the projects, you can see we got, we could put a status if we want, if there is. So this only updates when it moves across the different items on the dashboard. You'll see the dashboard very shortly. But if we go back, priority, how important is it? It's a P1, so it's so-so. Estimated, what Fibonacci number we have, the size, which is the t-shirt size, same, really almost like estimated how important it is. And then iteration, how fast do we want to complete it? So this one looks like it's not going to happen for another 2 more weeks or something. And we can also add things like milestones, relationships if it relates to another ticket, development. So this one, we can create a branch right here so then it relates directly to this ticket. So then people know where that branch is. They can click into it and then they can see the actual PR that's set up and associated with this. But before I do that, let's go into how we can create a ticket first, just so you guys could see the process. So I have an example here. I'm going to add an item. We could have put it in no status for right now, and let's say we have this ticket with the number and title T1026. It has a history for the history profile page with chart.js. So we're trying to implement some sort of chart into our application, and what I could do is I could write some sort of description here, and I already have a pre-planned description made for it. So there's if I go preview, you can see the formatting properly. It's just using GitHub GitHub projects formatting, so hashtag, depending on number of hashtags, that determines the header size, and then you can set up like a table with these pipe symbols as well. So if I go back to preview, you'll see narrative, a description of it, small little scenario, what it's about, and then the BDDs, so what individual tasks are associated within this ticket here. You can see it's nicely organized and it describes exactly what needs to be done. And if there's any other data that should be involved on how it's set up inside of the ticket. And once I click create here, you can see here I got this added to the no status because no status really has been added to it. Actually, it would be this ticket, sorry. So right over here, T1026 history profile page with chart.js. So maybe it's not ready for dev. We could actually remove it and then it will come back down here into the no status area. I think it's just having, there we go, just takes a few seconds. You can see here it's under no status. If I click into this ticket now, we can just see what information's available, and now we can start setting labels. So I would say, okay, this one here, it's just a story. They're going to be implementing chart.js. So there's the chart.js for its story, and then we'll not set the status yet, but we'll say this is a very important feature to have a chart. Implementing chart.js with cost sort of functionality and how the account kind of accumulates costs and transaction histories over time actually will take quite a bit of time. So I would say it's a fairly large story. It's a 5. And a 5 really I would say is similar to a large because you can see here there's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. So there's 5 different items here. And then the size, again, there's 5 different items. So I would just correlate whatever that number is to really the t-shirt size, what it is. And then the iteration, I would say I want to complete this as soon as possible so I could add it to the current iteration. And if there's any other relationships or milestones, we could add that, but I think that is enough. There is one more thing though, but I'll close it for now. So you can see here, this is our ticket and everything has been updated now with all the values that we want to associate it with, but I want to move it here into the ready for dev because I want it to show up on all the other boards. So if we go to our other boards here, this board can show everything very nicely, all the different columns, but maybe we don't want the things with no status involved, so we can go to current iteration and we can set these filters like iteration at current no status. So we want to get rid of things that have no status. And here you can see what tickets are ready for development so people can pick up these tickets. So that's the current iteration. I would go back to the backlog. And then here for this one, I can set this status now for ready for dev. And once I've done this, it will update. And if I go to the current iteration now, you can see that this ticket for chart.js now has been added to this current iteration. It shows up here. And whenever you want to, you want to pick up this ticket, let's say you want to assign yourself here, you can pick yourself here in the drop down. And once you pick yourself in the drop down, you assign yourself, you can then move this ticket over, drag and drop it into in development, and now it's assigned to you. You're working on it. When it's done, we'll set it up here into PR review. It means the ticket that you've set up, it's being reviewed by another developer. And once that is approved, then we can put into ready for test, and this just means a QA person can pick up this ticket whenever they have time. So they would go into the ticket and they would assign themselves to it. So a new QA member would assign themselves to this ticket, and then once they pick it up, now they're working on it, so it's going to go into the column called in test. But if there's some sort of problem or failure, they would bring this ticket back over into failed test, and this just means that whoever developed this ticket, who was working on it, they have to fix whatever issues they have maybe added comments into the ticket. And if there's something that's blocking this ticket and it cannot move forward, you can put it in the blocked column, and then hopefully this will be resolved. And then once the developer picks up the ticket again, it'll go into development. The developer is ready to start coding again, fix anything they need to. It'll go back into PR review. So now another person is reviewing this new PR that's assigned to this ticket. And once it's approved, it'll go back into ready for test, and it's either the same QA person can test this ticket they were testing before, or a new QA person can pick it up. It doesn't matter. And then when a new QA person does pick it up, or the previous one picks it up, then they put it in test. So now they're testing this ticket again. And once everything looks really good, they can just take this ticket and put it into the done column, and then this ticket is fully complete. So I'm just going to move this ticket back all the way over here into in development. So this ticket is still being worked on, and that little icon should update as well. So it's still open. It's still going to be assigned to, it's going to be available for someone to pick up. I'm just going to refresh this page, see if that icon updates. Okay, so this one here, that's interesting. I would have thought that this ticket would have been, okay, I see. So it's closed. I wonder if there is a way to open it back up again. Okay. So if I go to edit, save. Okay. I'm just going to leave it as is. I will look into why it is closed. Okay, so I figured out how to change this. So if you accidentally put this in the done column and it shows here closed, you can go back here all the way down at the bottom of the ticket and click reopen issue. And now you can see here it turns to that green dot there, and there we go. So now the ticket is good and it's back open. And just to go back here, you can see here this is just a board that shows everything, whether it's ready to be worked on, it's going through the process, and also includes the backlog with no status items. Usually all the developers will just be looking at the current iteration, so they know what tickets they're picking up, what they're working on, and so on. And then there is a roadmap. So all the tickets that have been assigned to a current iteration, you'll see them here, when they want it to be completed. Usually these tickets are really related to when the releases will be. So there are there could be different releases at different times, and there are certain tickets that need to be associated with a new release as to what features should be sent out into production. And sometimes tickets need to be moved into different iterations because there's not enough time, but this is a very nice visual concept as to what tickets are close to their deadline and if it's possible to still be complete. And then there is this thing called My Items. So anything that is assigned to you, you will see all the tickets here as well. It's just visually for you to see it. And then comparing it to current iteration, this is just to see everyone in the development and product management team to see what everyone is working on. So now we're going to look at how we can assign a ticket to a PR. So let's say we're working on this ticket here and we have some sort of ticket. We want to create a branch for it. So I could come over here into this ticket and I could click create branch. and it's really important to have proper naming conventions. So for this one, you can see here it starts with the T 1026, that's the ticket number, and then we put all underscores between all of the words, so there's no spaces. This is important when you're trying to link to the ticket on GitHub later, and it just keeps everything just really organized, and it's all lowercase, so there's no uppercase letters. So the T is all lowercase, 1026 underscore, and then whatever that title is with underscores in between. And for this one, we don't have any really other sub branches. We're going to always target the main for this repository. So then I could just, we could check out locally or open branch with GitHub Desktop. So I have GitHub Desktop. GitHub Desktop, I'll show you what that is. It's just a application you can download on either Windows or Mac. So here is GitHub Desktop. If I click on this, I can click Create Branch, and then I can open GitHub Desktop, and then let me clone this again. Okay. There's just a lot of files. Might take a few minutes here. So here, let's take a look at this. Okay, we got this cloned on our desktop, and now if nothing happens, make sure your GitHub Desktop is installed. Okay, so we'll try again here. Open GitHub Desktop. Okay, so we could see here now, it has updated the branch. Before it was targeting main, and now we have the actual branch that we are going to be creating locally here first. We're going to add our code, and once we add our code, we can push it up, and I'll create a separate ticket on how we can push up code, but because this is more for product managers and product owners. But we can see here we got the PR branch all set up, and when we push it later on, this will create a PR which will then be assigned to someone else to just look over. And just so I can show you guys here what is going on, I'm going to move myself on the other side here, and you can see down here on the right side there is in development, and you can see the branch now. So this branch is now related and targeting this ticket here, and it just helps it organize and associate it all into one ticket, which is very nice. So you can see here that I have GitHub, the Visual Studio open now. So Visual Studio, you can see down at the bottom that this is going to be targeting the branch that has now been created with GitHub. And if I click on this area here, you can always go back to the main if you want, but whenever you are creating tickets, or whenever you are creating the branch, you want to make sure you associate that to the ticket number and the title, and you always want to create your changes within the ticket. You will not be able to push it directly into the main because the main usually has rules, and you'll get an error saying you cannot push your code into the main branch, so you have to always create a new branch. And because I'm working on this branch here, you can see down at the bottom left, this is what I'm working on right now, and this is where our project is going to be open. So here I'm just going to do an example. I'm not going to really code it just because of time's sakes, but I want to, so in the chart it's going to be actually in the home page, but I'll just put it in the login page for now. That's fine. I'm just going to do something super simple that's not going to do anything that bad. So let me just see here. Login.module. Right. because I cloned it, I just need to do npm install. Because I'm using Next.js with TypeScript, that's probably why the error is showing up. So npm install. So there we go, we got npm installed we got our node modules. And so here in the login page, I'm just going to do something really simple here, so then we can just pretend we're making a PR. So here I'll just put testing. And so let's say this is our fix for this ticket. If we look here on the left side, there's a source control. And in the source control, there is whatever has been updated, it will show up here. Okay, so we got this. I removed all of this code on the left. You can see it's red, and then the green just means what you have added. And this one, sometimes the package lock shows up as well. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but unless someone else has said otherwise. But for now, I'll just put T1026, and then I'll just say added testing code and removed unwanted code. So we're just doing a small description as to what we did within this ticket. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus sign to stage all changes. And you can see here now it's under stage changes. Before it was under changes. And what we're going to do is click on this arrow and we're going to do commit and push. And you can see here, once it's done loading, then we can look back online on our GitHub dashboard. So right over here, we can go into pull request tab. And if we do not see anything here, let me change. So I'm going to go to my account here. And so these are the PRs that are available. Okay, we can see here now it showed up. This is the ticket that I was working on. You can see this is the branch that was automatically created with our ticket. And we pushed our changes, and now it's here in the PR pull request area. We're going to click compare and pull request. And here we're going to change this. We're actually going to add this comment here into the writing. I'm going to go to my dashboard. So let me just go to, this is the old dashboard that I had. This was all in drafts, but the new one that I showed you right now is much better. And I'm going to go to projects. And I'm just going to have to switch here. So right over here, we're going to go into team planning. And when I open up this ticket here, I'm going to copy this title. And here, when I create this pull request here, I'm going to change this title to match the ticket number, and I've just put square brackets. You can use it with or without square brackets. It's just making sure you have that ticket number and that title available. And then we will create the pull request. Just write whatever you need that really describes everything that you have done or will be doing within this ticket. So I will create that pull request. Okay, I will go back. Maybe there's some sort of error. I see. It's because I changed users. I'm going to go back. And let me try that again. I will click create pull request. Perfect. So now we have this PR set up, and you can see here that we have a bunch of rules that are set up. It's going to just look through it. It's going to see if there's any failures or anything. And the reason it says these X's, it's merged block because we have a review that's required, so we need to have at least one person approve this changes that is going on within this PR, and you can see all the checks have passed, but we just need someone to actually look at it. So here in assignees, you can assign someone. I'll just like assign someone else, and let's say, okay, I click a random person here in the drop down, and then labels doesn't really matter. I wouldn't worry too much about this. The most important thing is the ticket. So here in the ticket, this is where it already should show all of the important information. Looks like because this one was opened up again, maybe it might have lost some of the information. Let me check here. Current iteration. So right over here, we can see that the T1026 ticket that we're working on, if I click on this, we have all the information about the project already. It looks like it's just not added here in the actual PR, but I think it's fine. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like needed to re-add things because it's just going to be redundant. This is more for the developer just to see what conversations are going on. If someone else has a comment about what they've done, they can write a comment, click comment, and there's also an area for the commits. So any pushes that other developers have done, it'll show up right over here. And then the checks. So this is these are the rules that show up on any of the rules like in the back end of GitHub, which I can make another video for in the future. And also it shows up here when it starts really evaluating if it has passed all of the checks on GitHub or the YML file, usually called YAML file. And then file changes. So this is where you can actually see which part of the file has been changed. You'll see it in red, it has been removed, and then whatever has been added will show up in green. And if everything looks good, the person who's looking at the ticket would actually just say, okay, looks good, or whatever comment they want. They would click on this approve button or this toggle here, and then they will click submit review, and then this will close the entire ticket. It will not move the ticket here in the dashboard. So once you know that this ticket has been approved and it's ready to go, then so this should be in the PR review column while the person is looking at the ticket. So this knows that, so then people know where the progress is on this ticket. But once it has been approved, then this ticket will move over to the ready for test column. So then a QA developer can now start looking into it. And when they pick it up, the QA developer will start working on it and it'll be in test. So then this is where the QA developer will determine if it has failed or it passed. If it failed, it goes into the failed test column. So if you like this video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and also let me know down in the comments below if you have any questions about this. If there's anything that you're unsure about, I'll just make extra videos for it. This is just a high-level overview as to how to set up GitHub dashboards, the type of GitHub dashboards, how to work with the different teams, and then seeing how it shows up within all these different tables here, and then just assigning yourself how to write the tickets. Those are the most important things when you are getting started on a project.